The old metal moon of Tarvos hung in the dark like a broken lantern. And inside its rusted tunnels, an alien mother named Lyra was running for her life. Her breathing was sharp, her hands shaking, and her heart felt like it was cracking inside her chest. She kept calling out one word again and again. The only word that mattered to her now, Io. My baby, where is my baby? But no voice answered her, only the cold echo of her own cry came back to her. Tarvos Station was a place where the weak suffered, where the poor paid for everything with pain, and where the Iron Syndicate ruled without mercy. Lyra had lived here her whole life. But she had never been this afraid, not even during the Great Famine, not even when the air system failed last winter. Today was worse. Today they had taken her newborn child. She turned a corner and almost fell as she reached her small home. A tiny metal room with barely any light. The door was broken from the Syndicate's force. Hanging sideways, sparks dancing from the wires. The room was empty now, too empty. The baby's blanket lay on the floor, torn and stepped on by Syndicate boots. Lyra fell to her knees, lifted the blanket to her face, and cried so hard her voice became a whisper. They took him. They really took him. Everyone in the station knew the Syndicate's rule. If you owed them something, you paid. If you had no credits, you paid in labor. If you had no strength, you paid with your future. And if you had nothing at all, they took whatever you loved most. Lyra had nothing. She worked long hours in the metal vents, cleaning radiation dust with her bare hands. But months ago she got sick and could not work. So the debt grew, and when she gave birth to her baby, the Syndicate came the same night. They said it was fair payment. Her child was rare, born with bright silver eyes that only 1 in a million of her species had. Scientists paid high credits for such children. So the Syndicate claimed him. She tried to fight, but they pushed her down and walked away with her crying newborn. Her screams kept echoing in the corridor long after they were gone. Now she sat there, holding the blanket. Feeling like the world had ended, she whispered, "Someone, please help me." And then something strange happened. A loud voice came from the station speakers. A voice that everyone recognized but rarely heard. "Attention, all sectors. A human ship has arrived at noon. Repeat. A human ship has arrived at noon." The station air changed instantly. People stopped walking, shops went silent. Even Syndicate guards paused for a moment, their eyes narrowing. Humans were not common in this part of space, and they were not simple creatures. They were strong, unpredictable, emotional, and fearless. Some said humans were born with fire inside their hearts. Rumor said a single angry human once caused an entire Syndicate station to surrender just by speaking. Lyra did not think any human could help her, yet the message stayed in her mind. Why had a human come here now on this terrible day? Was it just chance or something else? As she held the blanket tighter, she heard distant footsteps. Not Syndicate boots, these steps were heavier. Slower, more confident. Down the hall walked a tall figure in dark armor. A human male, broad shoulders, calm eyes, and a heavy travel pack on his back. He looked around the station like he could see every danger hidden in the shadows, like nothing here could scare him. His name was Commander Hayes, though she did not know it yet. He had come to Tarvos for reasons of his own, but when his eyes met Lyra's, he stopped walking. He saw the broken door. He saw the bruises on her arms. He saw the crushed baby blanket in her hands. And something inside him shifted. He approached slowly, not wanting to frighten her. "What happened here?" he asked in a calm, steady voice. Lyra looked up at him, tears still falling. "They took my baby. They took him to pay my debt." Hayes did not speak for a moment. His face did not show anger. But his eyes changed. They became sharp, focused, dangerous, like someone had lit a fire inside him. "Who took the child?" he asked. "The Iron Syndicate," she whispered. "They said I owed them. and they took him away. Hayes straightened his back. He looked down the hallway where Syndicate guards patrolled. Then he looked back at Lyra and said one quiet promise. "I will find your baby," Lyra gasped softly. "No one fights the Syndicate." "You cannot." But Hayes only answered with a voice as cold as steel, "I am human," and with that, he walked toward the Syndicate zone, alone, fearless, ready to start a battle no one else dared to begin. Commander Hayes moved through the rusty corridors of Tarvo Station with slow, steady steps, each step echoing like a quiet warning. The air was thick with fear, not his fear, but the fear of every alien who lived under Syndicate control. Creatures of all shapes and colors watched him from behind broken doors and flickering lights, their wide eyes following the human who dared to walk openly into danger. Hayes did not rush. Humans rarely needed to rush. Their confidence came from something deeper, something that made other species nervous. Some said humans had a strange instinct, a sharp sense that allowed them to walk into a trap and still come out alive. Hayes stopped at a small market stall where an old alien vendor stood frozen. Staring at him, the vendor's hands trembled as he tried to hide the fear on his face. Hayes lowered his voice and asked gently, "I'm looking for the Iron Syndicate headquarters." The old alien swallowed hard. "Human, please. Do not go there. They will hurt you." Hayes leaned closer. "They took a baby today." The vendor's eyes widened. "Yes. Lyra's child." Everyone heard the screams. "Then show me the way," Hayes said, his voice steady. The vendor hesitated for only one breath before pointing down a long metal passage. "Follow that corridor until you reach the black doors. After that, I cannot help you." Hayes nodded once. He did not expect help. He only expected resistance. As he walked, he replayed Lyra's words in his mind. "They took my baby. They took him to pay my debt." His jaw tightened. He had seen cruelty in many corners of the galaxy, but nothing angered a human more than hurting a child. The black doors appeared ahead, tall and wide, marked with glowing red symbols that meant danger. 2 Syndicate guards stood in front. Large reptilian beings with thick armor plates and electric rifles. When they saw Hayes approaching, they laughed, a cold, mocking sound. "Human." "Leave," one guard growled. "This is Syndicate territory." Hayes did not stop. He kept walking until he stood just a few feet from them. He raised his hands slightly, not in surrender, but in calm warning. "A baby was taken," he said. "I'm here to get him back." The second guard hissed through sharp teeth. "No human commands us." Hayes sighed softly. He did not enjoy violence, but he understood it better than most. "Move," he said in a voice that was too quiet for comfort. The guards stepped forward, ready to attack, but humans were fast. Faster than their size suggested. Before the guards could lift their rifles, Hayes grabbed one weapon, twisted it down, and slammed its butt into the guard's chest with controlled force. The reptilian creature fell backward, gasping. The second guard swung at Hayes with a heavy fist. Hayes ducked naturally, as if he'd seen the attack before it even started. He struck once clean, precise, effective. The guard dropped to his knees, confused by how quickly the fight had ended. Hayes stepped over them, opened the heavy black doors, and entered the Syndicate zone without a second thought. Inside, the atmosphere changed completely. Cold lights glowed overhead, metal floors hummed with hidden machinery, and security cameras turned to follow him as he walked. Someone was watching, someone powerful. Deep in the control room, the Syndicate leader, Varan, watched Hayes appear on the screen. His long gray fingers tapped against the table. "A human," Varan muttered. "We have not had human trouble in years." One of his lieutenants spoke nervously. "Should we stop him, sir?" Varan smiled slowly. His sharp teeth glimmered under the dim lights. "Let him walk. Let him see what he is up against." Hayes continued through the metal halls. He passed prisoners in cages, forced workers in chains, and children cleaning floors with trembling hands. The more he saw, the tighter his fists became. A small alien girl peeked at him from behind a storage crate. Her eyes were wide and terrified. Hayes crouched down and spoke softly. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt anyone." She pointed down a narrow hallway. "They took the baby that way. To the lab." Hayes placed a gentle hand on her head. "Thank you. Stay hidden." He rose and headed toward the lab doors. Each step carried more weight, more purpose. When he reached the lab entrance, he paused only for a moment. He could hear machines humming inside. He could hear voices. He could almost hear the faint cry of the baby. He pushed the door open, and what he saw made his blood turn cold. The infant was trapped inside a glowing glass pod. Connected to wires, scientists circled around. Taking notes, one of them said, "The child's DNA is perfect. The Syndicate will earn millions." Hayes stepped inside. He said nothing. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He only walked forward. And every scientist in the room froze. "What are you doing here?" "Human," one of them asked with shaking breath. Hayes looked at the baby, then he looked at the wires. Then he spoke with a voice that carried the weight of a storm. "I said I would find him." The scientists backed away as Hayes reached for the pod. He placed a hand on the glass, and for a moment, everything went silent. A human had entered the Syndicate's strongest territory. Alone, unafraid, and now the real fight was about to begin. The lab lights flickered like nervous eyes as Commander Hayes stood in front of the baby's glass pod. The room was filled with machines taller than him. Wires crawling like metal snakes across the floor. Blinking monitors showing scans of the infant's tiny body. Every scientist took a step back, unsure if the human was a threat or a warning. Hayes did not move fast, but he radiated a calm danger. The kind that comes from someone who has survived too many battles to count. He touched the glass again, checking the baby's breathing. The infant was crying softly, a thin, trembling sound that made Hayes's jaw tighten. He whispered, almost to himself, "You're safe now." "I'm here," but safety was still far away. Because outside the lab, alarms suddenly burst to life. Red lights flashing like angry eyes across the ceiling. A mechanical voice echoed through the corridors. "Alert! Intruder detected. Level 3 threat. Secure all exits." Haz looked up slowly. He knew the Syndicate would not be gentle now. He lifted his hand and pressed a switch on the pod. And the glass shell hissed open with a sharp metallic sigh. The scientists gasped. "You can't take him," one protested weakly. "He belongs to the Syndicate," another whispered in fear. Hayes turned his head slightly. "He belongs to his mother," he said in a voice steady as steel. He picked up the baby carefully, wrapping him in a soft cloth lying on a nearby table. The infant reached out with tiny fingers and grabbed Hayes's thumb. A simple touch, but it hit Hayes like a punch of emotion. He whispered again, "I won't let them hurt you." He stepped toward the exit. But the electronic door slammed shut with a heavy boom. Trapping them inside, metal shutters locked into place. Covering the windows, the scientists backed into the corners, trying to make themselves invisible. One of them whispered, "They've activated lockdown." "No one leaves now." Hayes scanned the room quickly. His soldier instincts kicking in, he spotted an emergency panel on the wall. He shifted the baby carefully to one arm and punched the panel open with the other. Tearing wires free with controlled force, sparks flew, the lights flickered again. And the door gave a small mechanical groan. It wasn't enough to open it, he needed more. Suddenly a voice boomed through hidden speakers, deep and cold. "Human. You are making a grave mistake." Hayes knew that voice before he even turned. Varan, the Syndicate leader, watching from somewhere safe and distant. Hayes looked up toward the speaker and replied, "You took something that was never yours." Varan laughed softly. "That child is rare. Valuable. We have debts to collect." Hayes spoke without raising his voice. "You call it debt, I call it slavery." There was a long pause. Then Varan answered, "Human, you cannot fight all of us." Hayes looked down at the baby in his arms. Then he gave a quiet, almost dangerous smile. "I don't need to fight all of you." He ripped out one more wire. And the door clicked half open before jamming. Not enough space for an adult, but enough for the baby if Hayes forced it. Hayes didn't hesitate. He slid the baby through the gap first, holding him carefully until the infant was safe on the other side. Then he tried to squeeze through. His armor scraped metal, sparks falling like tiny stars. But he forced himself out with a heavy push. The lockdown alarm grew louder. Echoing down the hallway, guards were coming. He could hear their heavy boots pounding the floor in angry waves. Hayes held the baby close to his chest and moved fast. Not running blindly, but with purpose, he scanned the hall, searching for shadows, for turns, for any path that led away from the guard's approach. A small maintenance tunnel appeared on his left. Half hidden behind old supply crates, he ducked inside. The space barely wide enough for him, pipes hissed around him. Hot air blowing against his arms as he crawled through the darkness. Behind him, guards shouted. He went this way. "Find the human. Bring the baby back." Hayes kept moving, inch by inch through the cramped metal tunnel. His breath steady, his eyes focused. The baby made a soft whimper. Hayes gently tapped the child's back, comforting him. "It's all right, little one," he murmured. "I'll get you to your mother." The tunnel ended at a grate. Hayes kicked it open silently and stepped out into a dim hallway filled with old wires and broken screens. He wasn't in the clear yet, but he was deeper into Syndicate territory than any outsider had ever reached. Above him, the station speakers crackled again. This time Varan's voice sounded colder, angrier, human. "Enough of this. You will not leave with the child." Hayes looked up and answered simply, "Watch me." He shifted the baby in his arms and began moving again. Every step took him deeper into the heart of the enemy. Every breath pulled him closer to a battle waiting ahead. The baby clung to Hayes, the alarms kept screaming. And the Syndicate prepared for war. But the human did not slow down. He had chosen his path, and he would walk it to the end. Commander Hayes stepped out of the maintenance tunnel and into a deeper, darker section of the Syndicate's territory. The air was colder, almost icy, as if the metal itself remembered the screams of those who once passed through these halls. The baby pressed against Hayes's chest, small hands gripping his armor tightly. Sensing the fear around them, Hayes adjusted his hold on the child, whispering, "I've got you, stay with me." Ahead of him, the hallway split into 3 paths, each one dimly lit by dying lights that flickered like nervous hearts. He listened first, letting silence guide him. On the left, he heard guards shouting, their heavy boots smashing against metal floors. On the right, he heard the mechanical hum of energy weapons charging. But the center path was quiet, too quiet. He chose the center path. Silence meant danger, yes, but it also meant opportunity. Humans had a strange instinct for walking into the unknown, and Hayes trusted that instinct more than any map. As he walked, he noticed the walls shifting slightly, smooth panels sliding like silent puzzles moving on their own. The air shimmered, light bent in odd ways. It felt like the hallway was watching him. Then he realized the truth. "This is not a normal corridor," he murmured. He had stepped into the Syndicate's infamous trap system, a shifting maze known as the Glass Labyrinth. Only the Syndicate leaders could navigate it safely. Everyone else was swallowed by it. The maze shifted again. The walls moved an inch, then a foot. The lights dimmed, then brightened suddenly like a camera flash. Hayes stayed calm. Panic was deadly in a place like this. He looked around, studying each reflection on the walls. There were no doors, no signs, only mirrored panels that twisted the world into a distorted puzzle. The baby whimpered softly. Hayes placed one hand on the back of the baby's head. "It's all right. Just stay with me," behind him. A soft mechanical voice whispered from hidden speakers, "Human. You cannot escape the labyrinth," Varen's voice, cold and pleased. "You should have left while you had the chance." Hayes kept walking. He knew the voice was trying to push him into fear. Fear slowed your steps. Fear made your eyes lie to you. Fear made the maze stronger. He ignored it. He focused instead on small details, the way the lights reflected. The slight breeze from the ventilation, the smallest vibration under his boots. Each clue was a path, and Hayes followed them, step by step. The maze shifted again, faster this time. Panels slammed shut behind him. New openings appeared ahead. One wrong step and he would be lost forever. But Hayes kept going. His mind working like a soldier solving a battlefield. This wasn't a trap. It was a machine with patterns, timing, and logic. If it could be built, it could be beaten. He took a left turn, then a right. He moved just as the walls slid behind him. The baby stayed quiet now, perhaps sensing his certainty. Varen's voice returned, annoyed this time. "You are only delaying the end. The child will be mine again." Hayes stopped walking. He turned his head slightly and said, "You talk too much." He walked again. Faster, and then something changed. A low vibration shook the floor. A deep rumble echoed through the maze. And the panels around him began to glow, suddenly. 3 armored drones dropped from the ceiling. Their red eyes locking onto Hayes and the baby, they floated on silent engines. Weapons glowing blue. Their voices buzzed. "Return the asset." Hayes exhaled slowly. He could not fight them with a baby in his arms. He had to outthink them. He looked at the mirrored walls, the reflections twisting the lights. He saw something, a pattern, a weakness. He stepped sideways just as a drone fired. The shot hit the mirrored wall. The reflective surface bent the beam back like light bouncing off water. The ricochet struck the second drone, sending it crashing into a panel with sparks flying. The remaining 2 drones recalibrated, but Hayes moved quickly. He stepped into a blind corner where the reflections confused their sensors. They fired again. This time the shots rebounded twice. The maze became their enemy. The beam struck both drones with violent flashes, dropping them to the floor like broken toys. Hayes didn't stay to watch. He knew the maze would shift again soon. He moved forward, following the faint breeze in the air. Ventilation meant space. Space meant an exit. The hallway opened suddenly. The mirrored walls faded into normal metal. The shifting noises stopped. Hayes had escaped the glass labyrinth. Before him stretched a wide chamber filled with machinery. Large pipes, glowing containers, and a massive central energy core. This was the Syndicate's power room, the heart of their control system. He looked down at the baby and whispered, "We're close. Just a little more." Above him, Varen's voice returned, colder than before. "Human. You escaped the maze, but you will not escape me." Hayes looked ahead. He knew the final confrontation was drawing near. And he was ready. He tightened his grip on the baby, straightened his back, and walked deeper into the enemy's heart. The real battle was about to begin. Commander Hayes stepped into the massive power chamber, holding the baby close against his chest. The room was larger than anything he had seen in the Syndicate zone, filled with towering pipes, glowing reactors, and swirling energy currents that hummed like a sleeping beast. Blue and red lights pulsed across the walls, like the chamber itself had a heartbeat. Hayes looked around carefully, sensing danger in every corner. He knew the Syndicate would not let him walk this far without a trap waiting ahead. And he was right. A deep metallic clang echoed from above. Hayes looked up just in time to see 3 heavy steel doors slide open. From each door dropped a squad of Syndicate enforcers, armored from head to toe, carrying shock weapons that crackled with bright electricity. They surrounded Hayes in a half-circle, their eyes glowing with the cold confidence of soldiers who believed their victory was certain. Their leader, a tall alien with 4 arms and black-plated armor, stepped forward. His voice buzzed through a voice modulator. "Human, surrender the child." Hayes shifted his stance, protecting the baby with his body. "No," he said calmly. His voice held no fear, just a heavy promise. The leader tilted his head, confused by how relaxed the human was. "You are one, we are many," he hissed. "You cannot win." Hayes replied in a whisper. "I don't need to win." Before the enforcer could ask, the power chamber trembled. A deep thundering noise echoed through the pipes as the reactors surged for a moment. Hayes had already noticed the instability when he entered. "Syndicate tech is always falling apart," he muttered softly. "And today, that's a gift." The enforcer signaled his troops. "Take him," they charged, blue electricity lighting up the chamber like a storm. But Hayes moved with surprising speed. He dodged left, then right, every movement sharp and focused. He made sure the baby stayed secure in the crook of his arm. Humans were known for 2 things, strength and stubbornness. Hayes was proving both. A guard attacked with a shock baton. Hayes grabbed the attacker's arm and twisted it, redirecting the electricity into a nearby metal pipe. The pipe sparked violently, disabling 2 more guards nearby. Another enforcer lunged. Hayes kicked him backward, sending the armored alien sliding across the floor. It wasn't a powerful kick, just precise aimed at a weak joint in the armor. He didn't need strength, he needed accuracy. But more guards kept coming, Hayes back toward a service platform, one that looked as unstable as everything else in the room. The leader shouted, "Corner him!" Hayes stepped onto the platform, and the metal groaned under his weight. He shifted his boots, testing it. It would break soon. Perfect. As the guards rushed toward him, Hayes slammed his shoulder into a hanging fuel pipe. It snapped loose, dropping a shower of sparks across the platform. The unstable metal collapsed instantly. Hayes grabbed the edge with one hand and swung himself down onto a lower service rail, holding the baby tight against him. The platform above crashed, taking 3 guards with it. Metal echoed loudly as everything fell. Hayes landed hard but stayed on his feet. The baby whimpered. Hayes whispered quickly, "It's okay, I've got you." But the leader was not finished. He leapt down from above, landing on the metal rail with a heavy crash. "You are stubborn, human," he growled. "I admire that." Hayes didn't respond. He shifted into a defensive stance. Even while holding the child, the leader raised his 4 arms, each holding a different weapon, 2 shock rods, a blade, and an energy whip. This was a real threat, the kind that could kill him. The leader swung the whip first, its crack lighting up the air. Hayes ducked and stepped backward, the whip slicing sparks off the wall behind him. The blade came next, sharp and fast. Hayes twisted, barely dodging it. With every attack, Hayes moved toward a large coolant pipe that vibrated loudly. He had a plan, a risky one, but humans were built for risky plans. The leader swung both shock rods at once. Hayes used the momentum, letting the rods hit the coolant pipe. A burst of freezing mist exploded out, covering the rail in white frost. The leader slipped, his armor losing traction. Hayes saw the opening. He stepped forward and kicked the leader's chest, sending the armored alien sliding across the icy rail and slamming into a support beam. The leader groaned, unable to stand. "You cannot take the child," he hissed weakly. Hayes said one quiet sentence, "Watch me." Before more guards could arrive, Hayes sprinted toward a maintenance exit on the far wall. The baby clung to him tightly as he ran through the narrow tunnel, back into the shaking, flickering corridors of the station. Behind him, he heard Varen's voice echo through every speaker. "Enough games. Human, you cannot run forever." Hayes didn't slow down. He didn't look back. He kept moving, deeper into the Syndicate's territory. Toward the only place he could end this. Toward Varan himself, the true showdown was coming. And Hayes was ready for it. Commander Hayes moved through the narrow maintenance tunnel with fast, determined steps. The baby clung to his chest, small fingers gripping his armor like he sensed the danger ahead. The tunnel walls trembled around them as alarms echoed through the entire station. Red lights flashed like angry fireflies above Hayes's head. Every warning voice shouted the same thing. Human intruder approaching Central Command. Hayes knew exactly where he was going. He wasn't running anymore. He wasn't hiding. He was marching straight toward Varan, the Syndicate leader. The man responsible for stealing the baby. The man who believed no one could challenge him. As Hayes reached the end of the tunnel, he kicked open a metal grate and stepped into a wide hallway lined with black armored guards. They were waiting for him, their weapons raised, electricity crackling along their blades and rifles. One guard shouted, "Stop where you are." Hayes didn't stop. His footsteps echoed louder with every step. One guard fired an energy shot. Hayes shifted sideways without slowing down. The beam missing by inches, he kept walking, calm and focused. The guards exchanged nervous glances. Unsure why the human showed no fear, the baby made a small cry. Hayes whispered softly, I know. I'll end this soon," the guards charged. But Hayes was ready. He stepped aside, grabbed the first attacker, and used his momentum to slam him into the wall. Another guard swung a blade. Hayes blocked with his elbow and kicked the guard's knee, dropping him instantly. The third guard aimed a shock rifle. Hayes grabbed a fallen metal pipe and threw it with perfect aim. The pipe struck the rifle, causing it to explode in the guard's hands, sending him flying backward. More guards poured in from both sides. But Hayes fought like a storm. Every movement sharp, every strike precise. Even while holding the baby, he moved with a soldier's instinct and the fury of a man defending a child. The hallway floor soon filled with fallen guards. Some groaning, others unconscious. Hayes didn't stay to watch. He stepped over them and kept going. He reached a thick metal door with glowing red locks. Central Command was written above it in jagged alien letters. This was it. Varan was inside, waiting. Hayes took a breath, held the baby close, and punched the control panel. The door slid open with a heavy hiss inside the command chamber. The air was cold and sharp like broken glass. Transparent screens floated in the air, showing every corner of the station. Dozens of Syndicate officers stood at their posts, frozen in fear when Hayes entered. At the far end of the room stood Varan, tall, thin, and wrapped in dark robes. His long gray fingers tapped a cold rhythm against his metal throne. His eyes glowed yellow like poisoned stars. He smiled when he saw Hayes. So, the human arrives. Hayes didn't waste breath. He walked straight toward Varan. "Give me a reason not to end this right now," he said, his voice low and controlled. Varan chuckled softly. "You think you are powerful because you defeated a few guards. You are alone here. You carry a child. You are wounded, tired, and surrounded." Hayes answered simply. "I've been in worse situations." Varan spread his arms. "You cannot win." Hayes stepped closer. "I don't need to win. I just need to make sure you lose." Varan snapped his fingers. A hidden wall opened behind his throne, revealing a massive armored beast part machine. Part creature, roaring with metallic fury. Its eyes burned red, its arms thick with armor plates, and its claws sharp enough to cut through starship steel. The officers scattered to the corners of the room. Hayes stood still, adjusting the baby in one arm. Varan laughed. "Let us see if humans are as strong as the legends claim," the beast charged. Hayes waited until the last possible second, then dodged. The creature smashed into a console, sending sparks through the room. Hayes kicked the side of its mechanical leg joint. The beast turned with a roar. Swinging its massive arm, Hayes jumped back, protecting the baby with both arms as the claw tore through the floor where he had stood. He needed a weakness, something he could exploit. He scanned the beast quickly, their small vents near its spine, where the energy core was exposed. But he needed a distraction. He looked around, spotting a loose cable sparking with bright electricity. Hayes grabbed it and swung it toward the beast. Electricity danced through the air. The creature roared, stepping back. Confused by the sudden pain, Hayes rushed forward. He jumped onto the creature's arm, climbed onto its back, and jammed the sparking cable into the energy vent. There was a blinding flash, a violent crack of electricity. The beast screamed and crashed to the ground, twitching as the energy core overloaded. Then it fell still. The room went silent. Varan stared in disbelief. You killed it." Hayes stepped forward, holding the baby safely. He stared directly into Varan's trembling eyes. "I told you," he said. "I don't lose." Varan stumbled backward, fear finally breaking through his calm mask. He reached for a weapon, but Hayes moved faster. He slammed Varan against the wall with one arm. The leader gasped. "Humans are monsters," Hayes answered quietly. "Only to people like you." He lifted the baby a little. "This child goes home, and with that." Hayes ended the Syndicate's rule, not with armies, not with fleets, but with the unshakable will of a single human. Commander Hayes held Varan pinned against the cold metal wall. The baby rested safely in his other arm, his tiny breath warm against Hayes's chest for a moment. The entire command chamber fell utterly silent. Every officer froze, every console flickered. Every camera rotated toward the human who had done the impossible. Hayes looked at Varan with calm eyes. "Your rule is over," he said. Varan opened his mouth to protest, but the fear in his eyes showed he already knew the truth. He collapsed to the floor the moment Hayes released him, trembling like a shadow losing its shape. The Syndicate officers stood unsure, trapped between loyalty and terror. Hayes didn't threaten them. He didn't shout. He simply walked toward the center console with the baby held close. His boots echoed with a heavy promise. Every alien watched as he placed one hand on the command controls. He stared at the screen showing the entire station. Slaves working, guards patrolling, prisoners crying in dark cells. Hayes took a slow breath and pressed a single button marked System Reset. Warning lights flashed. Energy flowed through the wires like rushing rivers. Panels across the chamber flickered. Then everything went dark for a breath. Just one heartbeat of total silence. Then the screens lit up again. But now the locks on every prison opened. The shock collars on workers powered down. Doors that were always sealed swung open freely. The Syndicate's hold was broken, one officer whispered. "He freed them," another said with disbelief. "A human freed." "All of us." Hayes didn't respond. He turned away from the controls and walked toward the exit. But as he did, a young officer stepped forward and blocked his path. Hayes tensed, ready to protect the baby again. But instead of attacking, the officer bowed his head. "We owe you our lives, human," he said quietly. "The Syndicate has ruled us for decades. No one ever stood against them." Hayes adjusted the baby's blanket and answered, "I didn't come to be a hero. I came to return a child." The officer stepped aside, and Hayes walked out of the command chamber. Behind him, the station began to change. Guards threw down their weapons. Workers cried with relief. Families reunited after years of separation. Freedom moved through the halls like warm sunlight. All because one human refused to walk away. Hayes moved quickly back through the station corridors, retracing every dangerous step he had taken. But this time the shadows didn't feel threatening. This time he could hear voices whispering softly, not in fear, but in gratitude. "Human. Thank you. Humans saved us. Humans fight for justice." He didn't stop to answer. He only kept moving toward Lyra, the child's mother. He found her exactly where he had left her, kneeling beside her broken door, holding the torn baby blanket as if it were her last piece of hope, when she saw Hayes walking toward her. Her eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat. Her hands shook so badly she almost fell. Hayes stepped close and held out the baby, wrapped gently in the same blanket she thought she had lost. "Lyra," he said softly, "your child is safe," she gasped. A sound filled with shock and disbelief. She reached out with trembling arms and lifted her baby close to her chest. She cried, her tears falling onto the baby's soft skin. Her voice broke with relief. My baby, my baby. I thought I lost you forever." Hayes watched them quietly. He didn't speak, he didn't need to, after a long moment. Lyra lifted her tear-filled eyes to him. "How can I ever thank you?" she whispered. "You risked everything. For someone you did not even know." Hayes shook his head slowly. "No child should suffer," he said, "and no mother should lose her baby around them." Aliens gathered, watching the reunion with awe. Some were crying, some were whispering prayers. Some bowed their heads toward Hayes in respect. An elderly alien stepped forward, his voice shaking. "You have changed this station," he said. "You have broken chains we thought would never break." Hayes looked around at the freed people. He saw faces filled with hope for the first time in many years. He saw guards removing their armor and dropping it to the floor. He saw workers walking with straight backs instead of fear. Then he said something that made the entire crowd fall silent. "You don't need a human to save you again. You can save yourselves now." Lyra stepped closer, her baby still pressed to her chest. "Will you stay?" she asked softly. "Even for a short time." Hayes looked down at the tiny child who had survived so much. He touched the child's forehead gently, then he looked at Lyra. "I'll stay long enough to make sure no one tries to hurt you again," he said. The crowd cheered softly. Not loud like a roar, but warm like a promise. From that day forward, Tarvo Station changed. The Syndicate never returned. The people rebuilt their homes, their lives, their hope. And whenever anyone felt afraid, they remembered the legend. The legend of the human who walked alone into danger, who fought armies with one arm while carrying a child in the other, who broke a corrupt empire with nothing but courage and fury. They remembered Commander Hayes, the human who arrived at noon and changed everything.